The shirtwaist factories were notorious for exploiting labor, especially that of immigrant women. They were underpaid, charged for extras invented by the management, crowded into unsafe and poorly ventilated structures, searched when leaving the buildings, and often herded through a single exit while other doors remained locked. These conditions were led both to the Great Strike of 1909 and 1910, and ultimately to the tragedy of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of March 25, 1911. In late September of 1909, the employees of the Triangle went on strike. Management responded by hiring thugs and prostitutes to attack the strikers and received the assistance of police who arrested the strikers on the slightest of pretexts, or none at all. On November 22, 1909, in a meeting at Cooper Union, Local 25 voted for a general strike. Within a day, between 20 and 30,000 shirtwaist workers walked out on a strike. The majority of the strikers were women between the ages of 16 and 25. Most were immigrants, actually about 75 to 80%. Most were Eastern European Jews, and about 6 to 10% were Italians. The workers faced a powerful manufacturers association and corrupt government and a hostile police and court system. In the early part of the 20th century, Lawrence, Massachusetts was one of the most important textile towns in the United States. Its principal mills were those of the American Woolen Company, whose yearly output was worth $45 million. The woolen and cotton mills employed over 40,000 people. Many of those were foreign-born immigrants on low wages. It was estimated that about 50% of Lawrence textile workers were women and children under the age of 18. In January 1912, the American Woolen Company reduced the wages of its workers. This caused a walkout in the Industrial Workers of the World, also known as IWW, who had been busy recruiting workers into the union. They then took control of the dispute. The IWW formed a strike committee with 2 representatives from each of the nationalities in the industry. It was decided to demand a 15% increase work in wages, double time for overtime work, and a 55-hour week, and from there on, the rest was history. In the next following minutes, you will go through the struggles of these hard-labored workers and really what they were feeling. Enjoy.
The strike was better known as the Uprising of the 20,000. This labor strike primarily involved Jewish women. The strike was led by Clara Lemlich and was supported by the National Women's Trade Union League of America, NWTUL. The group was formed in 1903 to support the efforts of women to organize labor unions and to eliminate sweatshop conditions. The women were very thankful to have partnered with this group in the strike because it was a good, steady support system. In February of 1910, the NWTUL settled with the factory owners, gaining wages, working conditions, and hours. The group was all an alliance of working women and wealthy women, supported the strikes, trying to protect them from the New York police who wrongly arrested them and the thugs and the prostitutes. Clara Lemlich truly felt for the women of the strike because she too had been beat by the thugs and the prostitutes. This incident happened while she walked up to give her first speech as she emotionally and loudly said, "I move that we go on a general strike." She also said, "I have no further patience for talk, as I am one of those who feels and suffers from the things I've pictured. I move that we go on a general strike and that we do it now." She was angry and ready for the women's words and voice to be heard and put into actions for once. This strike sadly lasted a total of 14 weeks, but Blank and Harris refused to sign the agreement and resumed with their business.
In the 1900s in Lawrence, Massachusetts, there was a textile factory founded in 1845 that provided jobs for much of the city. This was a place where most underskilled immigrants would work. Many of them had little knowledge about the workplace and spoke very little English. With most of them being women or children under the age of 25, the death rate was high and the future for the employees was bleak. Most workers in this textile mill earned less than $10 per week. Eventually the factory owners would purchase new machinery, the wooden mill, which would increase production rates. These rates would lead to less of a need for manual labor and resulted in a reduction of hours for the struggling employees and caused many layoffs. This would lead to more difficult struggles for the hard-working and underpaid textile factory employees. Following the struggle of having layoffs, there was a new law in Massachusetts in which the American Woolen Company reduced the number of hours women and children could work. The hours were reduced from 56 to 54 in their work week, subsequently leading to pay reductions as feared. The unfair treatment would cause an uprising among the workers and the formation of the Industrial Workers of the World, also known as the IWW. The IWW gathered 2 representatives from each of the nationalities which worked for them and demanded that they get a 15% pay raise as well as overtime. The workers then grew more infuriated and started damaging city property, which would lead to jail time for many. The striking led to sympathy from other textile companies, which began to spread nationally. And by March 12, 1912, after having their reputation damaged, the American Woolen Company met almost all the demands of the employees who went on strike.
In conclusion, throughout history, as seen in both Lawrence, Massachusetts, at the American Woolen Textile Company and the Triangle Shirtwaist Company in New York, both immigrants and natives alike, mainly women and children, were given unfair work treatment, including unsafe conditions, a cut in their hours, and a lack of proper pay. These individuals sought, through adversity, to get what they rightfully deserved and became landmark institutionalists for change, fairness, and equality. Having 1909 in New York set the stage for women to be granted rights to be instated into the Union, they picketed hoping for 3,000 members, but amassed over 25,000 to walk out. After instatement, the working conditions did not change entirely. On March 25, 1911, a great fire in the building of New York City causing 146 workers, which were mostly women, to be burnt, crushed, or killed. In Lawrence, at the textile company, immigrants who spoke little English were forced out of their jobs with the introduction of new machinery, would get reduced hours in pay. This caused a strike for demands of fairness, treatment, and a raise in pay, overtime pay, and more hours, 15% exactly. The textile companies caved in eventually, and this brought forth national attention. Without these people coming forth and gaining what is theirs, this country's view on equality and labor rights may be different today. With their personal feelings and struggles backing their emotions, they successfully attained what they were striving for.